start. Okay, Maureen.
Okay, so welcome everyone to this virtual community meeting for NPA 2022-0017.02. My name is Maureen Meredith. I work for the Housing and Planning Department, and I am the Plan Amendment Case Manager for this case. If you haven't done so already, if you could type your name and organization if you're associated one in the chat box, I will use this as my sign-in sheet. Please mute your microphone if you're joining by phone, and please turn off your video if you're participating online to save bandwidth. And this meeting is being recorded. So as you know, this is in the Crestview Wooten Combined Neighborhood Planning Area. The zoning case has not been filed yet, so I don't have a case manager name to give you and contact information, but here is mine. It was also on the notice of filing and community meeting notice you received in the mail. The agenda tonight, I'll go over basic case information, guidelines for group discussion, how to participate in this process, why is there a plan amendment application, what is a future land use map. I'll do a brief presentation, then the applicant will do a presentation, then we will open the floor to questions and answers. So the basic case information, the property address is 7301 Burnet Road. Case number NPA 2022-0017.02. The project name is the same address, 7301 Burnet Road. The request is to change the future land use map from commercial to mixed use. There is no zoning case filed at this time. Property owner is 7301 Burnet Road, LLC. Agent is Armbrust and Brown, and the agent representing is Michael Whalen. Guidelines for group discussion. Please feel free to type your questions into the chat at any time during this meeting. Please postpone general comments during the Q&A session after staff and applicant presentations. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand symbol in the menu bar. Telephone participants will be able to speak during the Q&A session, and we will call out the last four digits of your phone number. Attendees will be muted upon arrival and through the staff and applicant presentations. Then staff will open the floor to answer questions in the chat or by attendees raising their hands to speak. Similar questions may be grouped and answered together. Please mute your microphone if you're not speaking for the sake of sound quality and clarity of conversation. If you're having connection issues, turn off your video until called upon to ask your question. As I said, this meeting is being recorded and it will be posted to the speakupaustin.org/NPA website tomorrow morning. You can email or call me with any questions or comments that you might have. Written comments will be added to the staff case reports. You will get a notice in the mail with the date and time of the Planning Commission and City Council hearings if you live within 500 feet of the property, and it will have instructions on how you can participate in these public hearings. So why is there a plan amendment? Neighborhood plans are adopted by City Council as amendments to the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. The city charter requires zoning changes.
Maureen, second,
Yes?
you're looking at your team's page, not the presentation.
Oh, where did that go? It's interesting. How long has it been like that? Do I need to start over?
Just go back to why is there a plan amendment? That would be a good place to start.
Okay.
But the other stuff is just boilerplate meeting stuff, what, how's it going to be run and stuff. So.
Okay. So why is there a plan amendment? Neighborhood plans are adopted by City Council as amendments to the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan. City charter requires zoning changes to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Most neighborhood plan amendments are amendments to the plan's future land use map, and most NPAs have an associated zoning application. This map shows the areas in blue that have City Council approved neighborhood plans. The plans have a text document that has vision and goals. They also have future land use maps, and the colors on the future land use map represent broad land uses. In this case, the current land use is commercial and it is shown in red, and the proposed land use is mixed use, which would be represented by the brown color. Here is a zoomed in future land use map of the property. And this chart shows the zoning districts in relation to the broad land uses. For example, since this is zoned CS and with a CO, it is red, which is the commercial land use. This is just aerial photo that shows the property. Here's a Google map that shows the uses on the property and some of the surrounding uses. This is an aerial photo with the future land use overlaid. Here is the zoning map and the surrounding zoning on the property. This is the Imagine Austin Growth Concept Map that shows regional centers, town centers, neighborhood centers, and activity corridors. This map shows the property in relation to the activity centers and corridors. You can see it's on Burnet Road, which is an activity corridor, and it has some surrounding activity centers to the property. This is the property in relation to public transportation. And that ends my presentation. So Michael, I understand you are going to do the presentation?
That's correct. April has the presentation she'll pull up.
Okay, so if you wanted to, at this point, introduce yourself and your team, you can do that now.
Okay, and then can we run through the presentation? Does she have rights to, April, do you want to pull that up?
Yeah, she just needs to share
Okay.
her screen.
Give me 1 second, I'm just getting it switched over. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Great.
So, first of all, thank you, Maureen, Meredith, and Mark Walters, and thanks for everybody for being here. Appreciate this opportunity. I'm Michael Whalen on behalf of the applicant. I've left my email address. I posted that, and I know many of you. I know many of you for decades. Donna Beth, especially. Joining me is April Brown, who is part of my team. So I'm here tonight to discuss our request to amend the future land use map, or the FLUME, which we've just described. This is the overview bullets. It's changing it from commercial to mixed use. And for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the future land use map concept, I think the overview that Maureen just gave you was excellent. All it is a planning tool that establishes high-level policy direction for what types of growth, what type of future growth the city deems appropriate for each site. Essentially, it's setting expectations for how a site should be used in the future. The city's policies require flume changes west of IH-35 to be submitted in February as part of the typical process, which is why we filed early in the year and are now here with you today. I think we're on the next slide, April, if I'm recalling correctly.
Mine is showing us on the overview. Are we not? Is that not what's showing in yours?
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, okay. Now it is. It's really important to understand that this is not a rezoning. Entitlements on the site. When there is a future zoning proposal for redevelopment, we are going to be coming back to the community for further conversation, and we'll be able to talk through the details together. So I want to talk about the site and why mixed use is appropriate in this location. 7301 Burnet is located on an Imagine Austin activity corridor, as Maureen just pointed out. It's also on an ASMP transit priority network roadway. The city uses these roadway designations to help guide growth. To that end, city policies encourage mixed use on the corridors, and they are seeking to extend residential entitlements to commercially zoned properties. Additionally, and I think we're on the next slide, April. We're still on the first overview slide. I don't know why it's not changing. Here we go.
These are showing on my end. I don't know. I'll just leave it like this and see if we can go through that way.
We're on the right slide now. Additionally, mixed use is already the predominant flume designation for Crestview's Burnet Road frontage lots. In fact, as we're going to discuss in a moment, this site is the only frontage property on its block that does not yet have the mixed use designation. If we go to the next slide, we'll see the location map. There we go. This is a location map of the site, so you can orient yourself. The site is, of course, on Burnet Road. It's about a half mile south of Anderson Lane. We go to the next slide. We'll see an image of the site today. It's currently used as a commercial strip mall. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. And if we go to the next slide, as I mentioned in the overview, this site is located on an Imagine Austin activity corridor. The city has established policies around development on the corridors, and Imagine Austin seeks to increase the percent of mixed-use development, particularly within activity center and corridors. The next slide, talk about transit. The site also has ample transit access. It's located on an ASMP, which is Austin Strategic Mobility Plan, Transit Priority Network roadway, and has direct access to multiple bus routes, including one of the only 2 Metro Rapid routes in the city. There's only 2 of those. We go to the next slide. 2 of the primary bus routes that serve the site are in the top 10 routes citywide in terms of ridership level. In the zoomed out map on this slide, you can see that several bus stops exist within a half-mile radius of the site, and these routes go both north and south and east and west and take folks from downtown all the way up to the Domain. And then we go to the next one, the future land use map. As Maureen already pointed out, the current flume designations for this area. You can see in the top left there is the legend, which indicates the different uses that can be identified or have been identified here. The city's mapping tool shows that nearly 2/3 of Crestview's Burnet Road frontage is designated as mixed use on the flume. And you can see on the map that our site is surrounded by mixed use on the frontage and is the only property not categorized as mixed use. Adding mixed use designations to the corridors is a clearly defined city goal, and they continuously take steps to achieve it. For example, when the neighborhood plan was passed in 2004, only about 1/3 of Crestview's Burnet frontage was mixed use. As the city updated its land use policies, council began updating the flume designation for these frontage lots to align with its planning principles. So to date, about a dozen other properties have been approved by council to change from commercial to mixed use. And our request simply follows that trend and further advances the city's goal of increasing mixed use developments on the corridors. Next slide. I know some may not be familiar with the difference between the flume amendment and a rezoning. The future land use map change sets expectations for future use. It's a rezoning change that would actually change the entitlements for a property. We are not seeking any change to the site's entitlements. So if we go and just recap, it's located on that Imagine Austin Activity Center and an ASMP Transit Network priority roadway. We know that the city and council encourage mixed-use developments along corridors. and the majority of Crestview's Burnet Road frontage is already designated as mixed use on the flume. So I think our request aligns with the rest of the area. And importantly, very importantly, this request does not increase entitlements. We're not seeking to rezone the property through this effort. Any future rezoning proposal will come back to the neighborhood for conversation and feedback before it goes to council. We're simply here because you're only allowed to modify the future land use map once a year, which is what we've done. So I want to thank everyone for giving us the time to meet with you tonight and discuss this project, and we're available to answer any questions.
Thanks, Michael. This is Mark Walters from the Housing and Planning Department, and I'll be moderating tonight's discussion. And we already have a couple questions in the chat, and I'm gonna read those. And the first is from Donna Beth McCormick. Has a survey done for the needs for more development on Burnet Road? We have a lot of building more. Are they being used?
Well, Donna Beth, hi again. It's a great question. The obviously we read a lot about the housing crisis. So I think housing is still a top priority. Mixed use would allow for there to be a residential component at the site if it were rezoned. Right now, it is not zoned in a way that would allow residential uses. In terms of a survey, I think it's really more market driven than survey driven. And I do know different areas have better success with commercial and better success with residentials. And I think that's more market driven than anything else. I don't know if that answers the question. We have not done a particular survey or done a particular economic analysis. The change in the flume would expand the type of base zoning that could be sought. The example being that you'd now be allowed to have residential in addition to commercial at the site.
So we have a question from Veronica. What is being planned for the space?
Yeah, so they don't have specific plans. They do know that they want to have a residential component, which is why they need to change the future land use map to expand the types of development or redevelopment that they might consider to include residential. But they don't have a specific plan yet.
We have a question from T. How tall will these buildings be along the corridor here?
Yeah,
And
so the current zoning is limits it to 60 feet under the current zoning that it has. So that's if you were to do a commercial building, that's what you could do at the site. There are the only density bonus that you could do would be affordability unlocked. I believe, and Mark and Maureen, correct me, I need to double check whether you could do affordability unlocked even because it doesn't have an MU designation. And I don't know the answer to that.
And I don't know that much about it myself, so I can't help you there. Another question from Donna Beth McCormick says housing, but affordable. And how high will the building be? And I think you answered 60 feet is what the base district will allow. And you need to study this very carefully, exclamation point.
Okay. I acknowledge that we have the I'm not sure I understand the study, but the base zoning is 60 feet. You would have to use affordability unlocked if it was applicable to get any other additional height or rezone the property to a different base district with that allowed additional height, and would have to go through a rezoning, a very public rezoning process.
Okay, T has a question, and it's, what about the Allendale and Brentwood neighborhoods west of Burnet Road, St. Louis Catholic Church, Lamar Middle School, top notch? I'm not quite sure what the intent is that, but yeah, okay. Again, what the businesses were Tuesday morning, I don't know if that, and again, that's from Veronica. So they're looking at doing something similar to what was done at the Triangle. Question: businesses below and residential above.
That's certainly one possibility. It's not with a mixed use future land use designation. It gives you the flexibility to do a mixed use project that has both commercial and residential, so long as your base entitlement allows it. I want to emphasize that. Or you can do just residential or just commercial. So I don't, again, there's tenants there now that have active leases. And so this is simply being done to better define what the future will look like for the site.
Okay, another question from Ms. McCormick. I think what you mean by study the needs, and will they be used and rented or sold? 5350 Burnet Road was supposed to be all of this, and the VMU has never done well.
Well, the VMU is the most successful affordable housing program outside of the university neighborhood overlay that we have in Austin. If you're talking about the ground floor, commercial use not doing well, I think many people would concur with you. Would probably be better off if the mix was done a little bit differently, but it's another debate for another time. Most is for rent, this type of housing, because the state law gives creates a liability tail of 10 years. So any architect or engineer or owner involved with building a condo that is sold is liable for 10 years, which is why you see more apartments than you do condominiums.
Okay, another question from T. What about those businesses on east of Burnet Road? There's no triangle. This is reality. There's no affordable housing currently and or in the future. I don't know what the geography involved with that would be. So, okay, I have another question from Laz or LAZ. Where would the parking be, underground or above?
No decision has been made about that. I mean, they really don't have, right now, as you saw, it's a sea of surface parking. So we really don't yet have a defined plan for what the redevelopment will look like.
Okay. With the change to mixed use, I think the VMU2, I think that's been referenced to. This is from Chip Harris. What is the maximum percentage that could be residential?
It's a good question, Chip. If it's MU, it's limited. As you know, the site area is limited. You can only have, for every 800 square feet, for each efficiency, you have to have 800 square feet of site area, like physical site area at the site. For a one bedroom, I think it's 1,000 square feet. And for a two or more bedroom, it has to be 1,200 square feet of site area. That's not the size of the apartments. That's like the physical property site area.
I guess I was thinking, Michael, with the MU designation, could the entire site then be residential without any commercial?
No. So vertical mixed use, it does two things. One, it eliminates that site area requirement, which comes out to about 40 to 44 units per acre, depending on your mix. It eliminates that. And then the vertical mixed use requires that at least one floor above the ground floor is residential. I mean, that's an absolute requirement of vertical mixed use.
Another question from Veronica. Would you happen to know when are the current leases ending?
It's several years. So I don't have the exact dates, and because I think they're kind of staggered, but it's nothing that's gonna happen immediately.
Okay. Question from Donna Beth McCormick. Or a statement. Seems like you don't have much of a plan, lots of questions and no answers or plans. You need to get something together. And this is a question from Reese Armstrong. Is this the parcel next to Taco Deli and Tuesday Morning?
This is the parcel that has a Taco Deli. That is correct.
And then there's another question from Nicole Netherton. Oh, never mind. That was just talking internal chat. This is from Steve. Will there be an analysis of how many jobs would be lost from the current businesses, and how will those be reduced, replaced, increased upon project completion with businesses that would stay on the property?
Well, that again would be something that would come up during the redevelopment process. There would we would need to probably seek to have it rezoned, which would be the time when a specific plan. Donna Beth, you're correct. Because of the system that's been developed, where you can only file a future land use map once a year. We're just trying to set expectations for what the future planning for the property would be. And at that time, when that occurs, we would evaluate the types of businesses that might be on the ground floor of a structure, and the jobs that would be created by those employment opportunities versus what's there now.
And I think Donna Beth McCormick echoes that question from Steve, saying this is an active shopping center. Where would these businesses go? And I think you addressed that. One more question from the chat, and we're going to go to somebody who has their hand raised up. So just bear with me. T, again, my frustration is the property taxes are going up and up. This whole thing is pricing out longtime native and other Austinites. And he shouts out, thank you, Steve. Okay. So, Reese, would you please unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, will the parking lot minimums be removed?
You mean the parking minimums? I don't see that. That right now the current code, as you just identified, has parking minimums.
Right. Like what would like a mixed use structure have to provide in terms of parking?
That would be found in Table A of the city code,
Okay.
which is, 1 second here, 25 dash, let me just pull it up real quickly. I think it's 25-6 list. So it goes by the amount of square footage you have for a particular use, and that will tell you how much parking you need to have. Yeah, it's 25-6 is transportation, and it would be Appendix A, which lists how much off-street parking you have to have. So, I mean, just as an example,
change depending on the mixed use versus the current just commercial?
it does not. It does not. Vertical. You have to tally up the total square footage.
Square footage will increase, and so parking will also increase.
It would be required to. That's correct.
Yeah.
If you do a vertical mixed use building and have affordable housing in it, you are given a reduced the amount of parking that becomes the minimum can be reduced. However, the reality that I think most people don't acknowledge is you can't finance a project. You can't build a project if you don't have enough parking, because lenders and equity partners aren't going to participate in a building that doesn't have sufficient parking. I mean, that's just a fact.
Yeah, Reese, for
Okay.
example, about the parking, a restaurant has a very, one parking space for like 55 or 75 square foot of space for one parking space.
Yeah.
Whereas an office might be one parking space per 250 square feet of parking of office area, you need one parking space. And
Okay.
there's a similar calculation that's done for bedrooms in apartments and so forth. So it's, like Michael said, there's a kind of a calculus that goes into figuring out what your parking minimums are. And then in this area, because it's in the central core of the city, you do get a 20% reduction because you're within the urban core. That's correct, right, Michael?
Yeah, and I thought you got up to 60, you got up to 40% total under vertical mixed use. I need to double
You very
check.
well could. I haven't had to deal with those regulations often recently, so
My concern was more that there would be too much parking, as we probably want to encourage people to arrive by bike or by transit, as cars are just going to contribute to A, the climate crisis, and B, just like take up space, where it's supposed to be mixed use, where housing and commercial can be there and not have to just be filled up.
Somebody, Reese Armstrong. Could be Matt's wife.
I think it's Matt's wife.
okay. Do we have anybody else? Okay, there's another hand up, and that's from Laz, L-A-Z, all capitals. If you unmute and ask your question, please.
Yes, I disagree with the woman that's saying that we need less parking to encourage mass transit, which of course we do need mass transit. But if the businesses are large enough, and there's restaurants and there's offices or whatever might be in this mixed use, hopefully that they're going to accommodate the parking potential, because we all know Austin takes a little while for people to start using mass transit. And honestly, I am 2 blocks away from there. And I almost feel like that this is going to turn into, with the project going on next door, that's being obviously demoed and built into a mixed use, that the parking situation is going to turn it into a new South Congress, where it's, behind South Congress and around there are some major parking issues where the neighborhoods have become parking permit only. I'm just concerned about the potential of that.
From what I can tell, actually, South Congress is great because there's lots of bus service and easy access by bike. And so it encourages you to not have a car.
I disagree, because I had a business on South Congress and had it for 20 years, and I saw how the parking issue did evolve. And yes, there's mass transit, but man, have you tried to go down there and park, so you wind up parking blocks away in front of someone's house. So that has a lot of potential for a mixed use like they're proposing.
Anyone else have any questions? Either raise their hand. Okay. In the chat, let me go down. When the Dallas nightclub was open, the inadequate parking ended up on many of the streets in Allendale. So, okay. Does anybody else have any questions or points they would like to bring up while we have this opportunity?
I'd like a
Will this
little
be moving
response
forward?
on the parking.
Laz, could you please repeat that?
Response from the developer on the parking situation, and of course, are they going to be looking for variance or anything like that if they don't have the
LAZ.
parking? Yes.
Okay.
We now have a
Yeah, in terms of parking, I would just say in terms of parking, it's back to what is the market going to require in order to build it. You can't, it isn't going to be, it's going to be built by finding somebody in the capital market that's willing to finance it, invest in it, become an equity partner. The only way that's going to happen is if it works, and it's only going to work if it has the appropriate amount of parking given the circumstances at the time that it's built. So to some extent, there might be minimums in the code, but there's also a little bit of a reality that, which is the marketplace. The market may say that that minimum is too low.
Okay, so T, could you ask your question, please?
Yeah.
One of my questions wasn't answered.
What's mass transit and people walking? Thing is that in the neighborhood are a lot of elderly people. And so the person like, oh, less vehicles and everything else. How are they going to be able to go to different venues on Burnet Road, west and east? Because you're looking at more of the taxpayers in those neighborhoods are elderly, and you're discounting those people. And this is what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Anybody?
You broke up a little bit. Mark, were you able to?
I had the same audio difficulty.
Could you try one more time, please?
Yes. My question is, how are you going to address for those who are elderly, who uses their vehicles to get to where they need to go to St. Louis Catholic Church, to maybe hang out with friends over at Top Notch? And it affects with this multi-use, more buildings going higher and higher, that is going to one day look like New York, which I despise with all my heart, because you never were able to see the skyline. And so how are you going to address those folks when all this stuff, and it's going to happen, I have a feeling.
Yeah. So when we go back through redevelopment, and by the way, I found the provision, if you did a vertical mixed use building with affordable units in it, you are the off-street, the parking requirement on site or off-street parking requirement is 60% of that required by Appendix A, by that appendix that Mark and I were referencing. To answer your question, T, there's obviously requirements for accessible parking. ADA prescribed parking is required for all buildings, and it's based on standards that are related to the number of total spaces that you have and the amount of square footage you have, etc. So being mindful of and obeying the law is one way that is accommodated. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that's...
No, it doesn't. It doesn't really, because I have seen what y'all have done to South Congress. I have seen what y'all have, I'm saying you all as a generic term. I have seen what has happened to Austin, and it is not, it's changing the dynamics drastically. You're not, the thing is there's no consideration. It's just, oh, we got to have affordable housing, which is not. Seriously, it's not. Because if you're charging almost $2,000 a month for a one bedroom, if you're lucky in this area, that's not affordable housing. And you see a lot of changes that are happening. Yes, I am totally against it. I will always be against it because I see what's happened over at the Triangle and even at North Lamar in Koenig Lane. It's ridiculous. So, you're not really addressing to those people who are in their 50s, who are active, great. But for the people who are unable to get around except by car, Oh my God, yeah. And who wants to stand at a bus stop at 100+ degrees? You know, think about it. I'll let you all be. Thanks.
Thank you. We're gonna have one more question. Reese Armstrong has his hand up, and then we're gonna go to the questions in the chat. Reese, would you please unmute and ask your question, please?
Yeah, so I have actually two questions. The first one is currently there's basically zero bike infrastructure along Burnet Road, and with mixed use and people living here, that's growing more and more of a concern. The bike lane is currently just a bike gutter, and I guess the only solution here is to ride in the road, which is dangerous and unsafe, especially for 14-year-olds like me, and or ride on the sidewalk, which is just is a space for pedestrians.
And the question is, how would this project,
Yeah, would there be any like addition to the bike infrastructure? Would there be any upgrades being made, improvements being made on that bike infrastructure for not just people living here, but along Burnet Road?
So it's a great question, Reese. Thank you. This area is on the Bike Priority Network, which is online. You can look it up. And so the city does have plans to invest along all the networks that have been identified as bike priority networks. It obviously is dependent on money becoming available. There was, as you know, hundreds of millions of dollars in transportation bonds over the last decade, some of which has been utilized for bike lanes. There is also, in addition, beginning June 20th of this year, they will start imposing a street impact fee on all construction, for new buildings, and that will be another meaningful source of money for streets and transportation modes.
That doesn't really address my question though, because I'm asking specifically about Burnet Road. You're saying it's part of this network, but currently it's just gutters along the side of the road. Is that
That's
really
right.
priority?
That's right. Like many roads throughout Austin. However, it's been given this priority as a bike priority network.
What does that mean? What does it do? Because I've seen absolutely nothing come from it.
well, I think what Michael is trying to say, Reese, is that there's plans to improve the bike infrastructure
Okay, so
along
there
Burnet
are
Road.
plans. There are plans.
Yeah, but the
Okay.
problem with anything like that is that it costs money, and they can't. You have to have the money available
Mhm.
to build
Makes
it and to put it in place. And I think that's always going to be the biggest thing that will stop these types of infrastructure projects from moving forward. Just lack of funding.
Okay.
So
My last question here is that is there any like timeline for a consensus on whether or not the this will actually go through, or like a consensus thing? Actually,
well,
going to
this
that.
process, this is the first step in the process,
Mhm.
and this meeting is required by our land development code. And so from here, it would go to the planning commission, and there'd be an opportunity for people to give their ideas or their issues or concerns to the planning commission. And then after planning commission, it goes to city council. And again, people will be able to, speak at the council meeting, provide information to the case managers, et cetera. So I think I don't know if that answered your question, but that's.
Yep, that pretty much answers it. So there will be a meeting at City Hall about this.
Yeah, Maureen, you want to pipe in real quick and maybe expand on what I just said?
Well, I was actually going to get a little bit more information from Michael Whalen to answer Reese's question a little bit. Do you plan to move forward to Planning Commission and City Council without the zoning case? Or do you plan to wait to move forward to public hearings when the zoning case is filed?
No, we're gonna move forward now. I mean, and this goes to Chip's question at 6:36, where he specifically asked if the leases won't be up for several years, then why is the flume change? The reason is to help with planning. It's hard to plan for a mixed-use project if your underlying zoning, if your underlying future land use map doesn't even allow that. And it's just a huge barrier, and one that is difficult to, overcome. It doesn't change the entitlements. We're not seeking those entitlement changes, Maureen, through zoning, as you've noted. That's why I had that slide that really showed the distinction. This is simply to allow for some better planning at the site.
Now,
Okay, thank you. I'd like
we're
to
gonna-
post my support.
now we're going to go to the chat, and you think you addressed the comment from Carolyn about Chip's question at 6:36. David has a question. Is this property currently for sale, or is there an intention to sale if mixed use is granted?
No, they're not. There's no, they don't have it for sale right now.
Okay. And Carrie C has a comment. I disagree that lenders will regulate the appropriate parking parameters. They'll fund whatever satisfies the code regulations. So, okay, Carrie C.
Carrie, I'd love to hear the experience you've had. That has not been my experience, but okay.
Okay, Carrie C, it's safe to say the city's vision for Burnet Road is out of alignment with many local residents, especially longtime owners. Blocking out the sun from our, like, what 5350 Burnet looks like is not appreciated. Then Veronica has a statement, thank you for your time. I would love to hear more about the vision once that is established. LAZ is in the chat is 60 feet the height limitation for mixed use, and how many stories is 60 feet? Generally about 5 stories, depending on how the building is
That's right.
constructed.
Yeah, it's 5 stories typically.
And Andrew Cunningham, how is height correlated to the change? Is height impacted by distance from multifamily residents? Will these, or MF, I assume he means multifamily, will these potentially change? Well, at this time, the
Yeah,
request
there's
is simply
no-
to change
Right.
the future land use map and not the zoning, right?
That's right. There's no change in entitlements. The height is not being changed. Compatibility applies. There's single family residential that triggers particular setbacks and particular height restrictions within 300 feet.
And what if the owners don't like the plan and decide not to sell? From Donna Beth McCormick.
They don't, it's not for sale now, Donna Beth. I guess the reverse. So it's not, I mean, they don't have it up for sale right now.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions they'd like to place in the chat, or raise their hand and ask the question directly? Well, while we're waiting, I saw some people with at least one phone, and with the individual whose phone ends in 1370, would you like to ask a question at this time? And by the silence, I would seem to say that would be no. Anybody else have any questions they'd like to put in the chat, or raise your hand and ask a question? Okay, well, any other questions pop up, Michael? Would you have any parting statements you'd like to? Oh, hold on before you do that. Andrew Cunningham in the chat says, so who ultimately decides if this change is being made? And that would ultimately be the city council. Neighborhood plans are adopted by city council as amendments to the city's comprehensive plan, and the city council is the ultimate authority to change any of these plans. Okay, more questions. Therese, there is not projected a rail line to be going down Burnet Road. That's going to be along Lamar. As Michael said earlier, this is going to be the 803 runs down Burnet Road. Carolyn, perhaps I missed the answer to, if leases will be up for several years, then why is the plumbing change requested this year? Michael, would you like to touch on that again?
Yeah, Carolyn, I did pick up that question earlier, and it goes back to just allowing, right now, they don't have the option to have a mixed use project there. And yes, of course, it would require rezoning, but ultimately the future land use map would have to be changed in order for them to even begin that sort of planning. It is simply a future planning tool to set expectations for what is appropriate at the site. You know, it's just a common planning principle. It allows them to institute best planning practices to identify what potential might exist for, you know, what is a surface parking lot strip mall right now.
And I think, Andrew, I answered your question regarding who ultimately makes this decision. Question from Reese Armstrong: what would be the potential blockers for this plan or this change aside from city council? Well, if there is community opposition, the decision makers would hear from those folks. And if there's support, the decision makers would hear from those folks as well. And it would go to the planning commission, and the planning commission can choose to support the change, not support the change, or make no recommendation in the case, and move that forward to council. And then ultimately council is the body that makes the decisions regarding these types of changes. So Maureen, do you want to go over what, oh, another one. Will there be commercial corner stores on the ground floor? Is that the decision for the developer? I don't know if they would be corners. It depends where the roads, the driveways are, whether it be a corner or not. But yeah, ultimately the developer would choose the retail mix and the design of the ground floor and what kind of tenants they might be looking for. Okay, someone else is typing in. Maureen, if you would like to get ready to pop up the next steps in the process and contact information once this question is typed out. So yes, anybody can speak at the meeting, Reese. It doesn't matter if you live within 500 feet or 5,000 feet. You can come and provide testimony to appointed and elected officials. This is for LAZ. What is going to be at the large project where the Nighthawk was? I don't know. That would be at the corner, southeastern corner of Burnet and Koenig, I believe. And I don't know what's going on there. So, Michael, would you like to any? It's a mixed use development, as it's been said. The Nighthawk, another person is saying that there's some kind of mixed use project going in at that corner.
Yeah,
So
Mark, I would
yeah.
just say thank you to everybody for being here. Helpful to hear from the stakeholders, and that's it. And thanks to you, Mark and Maureen, for coordinating all this and getting notices out and being sure that everybody's informed about the status, which I know Maureen's about to go over.
And when our city council meetings on the weekends, city council meetings are Thursday. The zoning portion starts at 2 o'clock, but often city council meetings, they can be shorter or longer just depending on the conversation that the council members have. So sometimes zoning cases are heard later than the 2 o'clock. That's been my experience going to council meetings. So, but planning commission is on the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month at City Hall, and that starts at 6 p.m. And you can go online and see what the agenda is and maybe get a sense of where the item you would like to speak on is on the agenda. It gives you a sense of how late at night it might be. And Carolyn says Nighthawk will become Lennox Class A luxury apartments. So thank you, Carolyn, for that. Yeah, and yes, Reese, you can show up to the planning commission meetings. All these meetings are public can attend. Though right now they do have hybrid meetings of both, people can go there in person as well as provide testimony, through WebEx, very much like this. So Maureen, can you kind of go over the next steps, and maybe we can end the meeting a little early and give people about a half hour back and,
Sure.
okay?
So the next steps for this will be, I will meet with my planning team and we'll make a recommendation on the flum change. And because there's no zoning application, we will, work with the Crestview planning contact team on getting their letter of recommendation. And anybody who's at this meeting, you'll get a notice in the mail with rather, people who live within 500 feet, and I'm assuming most of you in this meeting are, will get a notice in the mail when the case is scheduled for planning commission and city council. I think we're doing 2 notices. So the first notice you'll get is a planning commission hearing date. It will be hybrid. So you can either participate virtually or you can physically attend the public hearings at city council. Once there's action at planning commission, we notify for city council. And that's it. Any questions on the process?
Nope. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for giving some time tonight to come out and find out about this project. And as Maureen said, if you want to provide testimony to her input, she'll take that and collect it and put it in the staff report. So the planning commissioners and the city council members can have this as part of their backup when they make their deliberations and discussions. So with that, unless there's any more questions, we can end the meeting here at 7:02 and we can get to the rest of our evenings. I thank you again and have a pleasant evening, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.